Hi, I'm Rachel, and yesterday I got to my YouTube subscriptions page, and I saw right at the very top was a video that Peg from Peg the Book Prize Addict made about me. And she told me that she would be, but it was still very moving to see that. I said to her that I was feeling verklempt, the Yiddish word for being overwhelmed by sort of positive slash grateful slash, that sort of emotion. Because also this weekend I'm going to meet Peg. I believe now she's in the Washington, D.C. area, and I also am in the Washington, D.C. area because I live here. In fact, I'm home today because I had a couch delivered to my condo. And so I'll be meeting Peg, and this will be my first ever BookTube meetup with anyone, which is really exciting. And as a cherry on top of the proverbial cake, the event we're meeting at is a book launch for an anthology where my short story Quarter Life will be published. So talk about an ego trip for me. It's kind of nuts. I'm beyond grateful that she was interested enough to come down here for that event, for something like that, and that I'll have someone I know in the audience at the book launch. That's just so great. And even in her video, she didn't just talk about me. She also talked a bit about the DC area and Politics and Prose, which is the bookstore that's publishing this anthology. It is the largest DC area bookstore. She went into so much more detail about like the DC area and Politics and Prose. She's like doing the work for them that I should be doing as a DC area resident. So I just wanted to pop on here quickly and talk about how excited I am to take this step in my BookTuber journey. I mean, I'm a little nervous too, it's kind of like this room is a closed set. And I don't know, with meeting and filming and so forth in the public, who knows what that'll be like. And this book event, this launch, just to put it out there for anyone in the DC area seeing this in the next few days. It's on Sunday, February 11th at 5 p.m. at Politics and Prose on Connecticut Avenue. But I thought I'd move beyond the topic of myself now, and if I'm already on the topic of BookTube-related discussion, I'll continue in that vein about some discussion videos I've seen recently. Why not interject myself into the conversation when I'm having this ego trip? I believe it started with Eric Carl Anderson, who made a video about positive versus negative reviews of books. And then Sean the Book Maniac and Steve Donahue, I think they took it more in the direction of objectivity in book reviewing. And that was of interest to me. I do think that being on BookTube, particularly this subset of like adult BookTube, where we look critically at literary fiction and nonfiction, I think that has encouraged me in the last year or so to be more critical and to be less mired in my own feelings. I think it can be difficult for those of us who aren't professional reviewers in that capacity to differentiate between our own personal emotions about a book and subjective reading. But I also think that objectivity isn't quite so black and white. I don't want to say that it doesn't exist, that there is no line, that all of your thoughts about books are valid. I mean, in a an objective sense. The thing about objectivity, I believe, with books is that you have to find a way to argue your points. So you have to have specific examples in the book that say, oh, I thought this character was introspective because of XYZ, that sort of thing. But I also don't think, like Steve, I think, was comparing book reviewing to something like mechanics, and I don't know about that. I think my relationship with books, I would to go back to Judaism, is Talmudic. It is about comments and counter-comments and debate. So it's a little less solid and a little more nebulous about what makes good literature, because even going by reviews, people disagree with each other, and not just over like, oh, I don't like this type of character, or oh, nobody was likable so I didn't like this book, but like somebody might argue that there was a comic tint to this book, and someone else might argue that there was a serious tint, and they both have examples to that effect. So I definitely try to be objective, and I actually don't think it's just BookTube that does it for me. I think, you know, I've been a writer for most of my life because I've gone to workshops and you read stuff from all different sorts of authors, and it's been drilled into me from an early stage that it's not cool to say, oh, well, I just don't like stories about zombies, so you are taught that that is not constructive criticism because a story about zombies is what this person wants to write. And so you have to look deeper and you have to think about what the author is trying to do with the story. And that's how you get to objectivity. You get beyond your own personal biases and say, well, if there's a story about zombies and this hungry zombie's letting this person go, why is that happening? To put in a that sort of example. For me, I write mainstream literary fiction, and I'm reminded of a class that I took in college where I submitted a short story to the class where the teenage protagonist called her mother by her given name, and somebody rose their hand in the class and said, I just don't see that as being realistic. And, you know, maybe, to be generous, maybe she would have had a point. Maybe I should think to myself, this is rare enough that I should consider why this character is doing it. Or even if it's not rare, why a character does anything that they do. But I don't know, the way that she said it made it almost seem like she was thinking of her own bias as an absolute, like if somebody calls their parents by their given name, like, you know, there's a self-destruct like in a Charlie's Angels movie or something. And I think the teacher agreed with me because I remember the teacher immediately saying, you know, but that can happen. You know, it's not a definite no. And I think that's one of those traps that you have to that you have to be wary of sometimes when you're objective, because I think also sometimes I read books and I say I don't see how XYZ happened. I don't see how that character made that choice, but somebody else would say, oh, well, I see it. It rings true to me. And I guess that's where maybe we have our own biases coming in that we don't see, or maybe we're trying to be objective. I always try to be objective. I mean, because whenever I look at character motivations in these types of stories, I try to give a wide pass for a lot of stuff. Not for everything, but I sort of have the assumption that people do crazy stuff all the time that I wouldn't do, but that doesn't mean that somebody else wouldn't do. So sometimes when something happens and it strikes me as untrue, I go back and I question myself and say, why do I think this is untrue? Is this like out of left field untrue? Can I, you know, justify my opinion about what this character did being out of character given other things about the character from earlier? Or do I just think it's weird because I don't know about it? Or, you know, it's not part of my history. So yeah, I mean, I think as any sort of reviewer, I think, well, certainly as a professional reviewer and also as a writer in workshops, these are the sorts of questions you constantly have to be asking yourself to be critical. And to, well, in terms of being in a writer's workshop, you want to help the writer the best you can get out the product that is the best for them. Not the best for you, but for the best for them. And sometimes you will have opinions or something will not ring true to you that will ring true to a lot of other people. And as a writer, that's something that I think about a lot too, because sometimes somebody will say, you know, this just doesn't make sense to me, but everybody else doesn't have a problem with it. Sometimes it just comes down to differences of opinion and sort of assessing your best course of action with being edited by mass consensus, as it were. I mean, there's no way that everything that happens in your book, plot-wise or character-wise or theme-wise, will resonate with everyone, but hopefully you'll have done enough workshopping and gotten enough of a consensus and about what works and what doesn't work for a variety of people. And as somebody who is critiquing at that stage, you want to do your best to keep your own biases at bay as much as you can, and to think about what the author is trying to do. I definitely feel more confident talking about objectivity from a writing workshop perspective than a reviewer perspective, even though I do write reviews of written books all over Goodreads. But that's, I believe, really where my my education with critical reading must have started mostly with being in writers' workshops and treating other writers the way I want to be treated, with the least personal bias possible. And hopefully, BookTube, I do believe, has helped me also get to that point more and more with published books. I do enjoy interjecting my own opinions in the Goodreads reviews about my own emotional reactions, but I always put those disclaimers in too, like, you know, this is my own sort of emotional standpoint about why I thought of a book this way, because I'm not writing a professional review where it doesn't have to be all about me. But critical reading is definitely useful for all of us to sort of have a broader conversation beyond our own biases. And again, I believe in objectivity. I believe in it a lot. I just don't believe that it's black and white. I don't think, like, you can go up to a doctor after surgery and I don't think you can tell a doctor, well, you did that okay, but you could have done it better. To me, it seems like that should be a yes or no question. But for writing, I think there's a little bit more wiggle room. So yeah, that about covers it for me. Again, I'll just plug again, February 11th, 5 p.m. for people in the DC area. If you want to attend the anthology launch where my short story will be published, and also meet up with a couple of booktubers, Peg and I will be there. So very excited, and I'm sure I'll have content from that on my channel later on. So yeah, happy weekend everyone, and I'll see you next time.